Hi, Matt Stait again from the Festival of Martial Arts. And today we've got Adrian Valman. Hello, Adrian. How are you?
Good morning. Good. I'm very well. Thank you.
Oh, that's great. Thank you ever so much for coming along today and having a chat. And also thank you for agreeing to be part of the festival. We're really looking forward to that. So I start these the same way, and that is I basically ask people if they can give a brief overview of who they are, what they do, what they've done, just for people who may not have heard of them. And so it gives people an idea of what to expect.
Okay. So my name's Adrian Valman. I've been training for 40 plus years, teaching for 25 plus years. My beginning was kind of judo, jiu-jitsu and karate. And then I went off to the IDF, the Israel Defense Forces. I spent a few years there and I studied as Krav Maga instructor for military. When I came out of the military, I came back to the UK and I looked at a few Krav Maga clubs in London, and I just felt that there was a lot missing. It was more like karate, more than what I'd learned. I started to understand that the stuff I'd been taught was how to kill people, not really how to defend yourself in the street. And then I went back to one of my old instructors and I kind of said, and he said, well, I've actually been teaching you something called Kapap for a few years, but you didn't realize. I'm like, sorry, who, what you've been teaching me? And they said Kapap. And then I discovered it. And I've been training, teaching ever since. I run Global Kapap network, which is an international organization. We have clubs in many countries, instructors all over the world. And it's fun. I enjoy it. I try and keep it as real as possible. For me, for those of you that know me, I'm 5 foot nothing. And I'm always saying if it works for me, I'm not the biggest guy in the world. I'm hoping it works for most people. But we have to adjust things for different sized people and whatever. But yeah, it's about making things work. It's about understanding the difference between street defense and a martial art, because I still teach martial arts, and a lot of people seem to combine them and don't realize there's actually quite a big difference, in how you apply something. That's kind of my background.
Okay, it's interesting. Yeah, we'll come back on some of that if you don't mind as we go along. But the first thing I want to do is ask the question, because you mentioned there that you were being taught Kapap, but you didn't know it. So that leads me to the first question, which is if there's a difference between Kapap and Krav Maga, what are those differences, how you see them?
For me, the differences were Kapap was more about containing a situation, restraining, containing, rather than killing. Krav in the military is using a weapon, to your best extent to dispatch the opponent. Kapap was more based on, we don't really want to dispatch that person, we want to control the situation. It's interesting. There's a lot of crossover. There's a lot of techniques that are incredibly similar. Obviously, every instructor has his twist, even in the military. You have many instructors and each of them have the same syllabus, but will show it in slightly different ways. We see that across in the martial arts world as well. So yeah, it was interesting. I kind of switched from one instructor to another. I'm now under Lieutenant Colonel Chaim Peer. And kind of, I enjoy what I do. I'm the chief instructor of my organization, but I still have an instructor. Well, I have a few instructors. It's always good to be kind of know that you're on the right track and you're still doing it correct. I think it's very important. And you keep yourself updated, which means my students and all my instructors can be updated as well.
No, absolutely. Yeah, I agree. At the moment that we stop learning, we stagnate, don't we? So, so that, I mean, it's interesting because the reason I asked that is because, as you rightly said, there seems to be a lot of crossover, and a lot of people are advertising themselves in both Krav Maga and Kapap. And so it's seeing that A, that overlap, but B, that there are distinct differences. And it was just trying to sort of
there are distinct differences. We've seen a lot of dare I say the word Mac dojos. coming up. Lots of people saying they teach Kapap or they teach Krav Maga, but when you actually say, well, okay, what qualifications do you have? Well, I did a weekend course, so I'm now teaching it. And you think, really? Okay, and that's fine. You know, some are naturally good, some not so good. Again, we see that across the board everywhere. You know, mine is not to question. Mine is, I always say, like my instructors always say, let's get on the mat. Let's see what you can do on the mat. You know, and we use the word on the mat rather than, you know, anything else. But, you know, let's see what you can actually do. And for me, that's the most important thing. It's not how long you've been training. It's not how big you are. It's not how many techniques you have. It's show something. Does it work? You know, can you explain it clearly? You know, can everyone get to grips with it? Is it a technique that has 33,000 moves that no one can ever learn? You know, or is it something simple? And for me, that's the most important thing. It's not necessarily how long you've been training, but obviously it does make a difference when you're a teacher.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah. Again, it's one of those, isn't it, where it's such a mixed bag. I mean, the fact that the terms Krav Maga and Kapap, they aren't copyrighted in any way, and anybody can use those umbrella sort of terms. It does mean that there's differences in standards and ways of going about things. But hey, no different to karate or anything else, I suppose, at the end of the day.
Well, I can tell you one thing about Krav Maga, and it's still in the IDF military today. There are a set number of techniques, it's been generally 15. And they've kind of been the same since the 80s. That there's slight differences and slight nuances, but, you know, Krav Maga for the military is a set of techniques that are easy to learn, very, very quick to learn, because the soldiers, they've got maybe 1 or 2 weeks to learn all this, and they're out in the field. And unfortunately in Israel, it is a war situation. Even in peacetime, there's still problems. You know, we don't live like that in this country, thank God. You know, and Krav Maga has expanded, and we see, you know, lots of stuff in Krav Maga that if you went to Israel, you just would not see it. And to a certain extent, it's the same in Kapap. We've seen that as well. You know, people always say to me, "Why is your syllabus so small?" And I'm like, "Well, the syllabus itself is based on what's actually happening in Israel." You know, then there's other sides. You know, you can add in the jiu-jitsu, you can add in the karate, you can add in Muay Thai, as long as you make it clear to everyone these are add-ins. This is not the syllabus. And I think that's where a lot of maybe schools go wrong, is they have a massive syllabus and they say it's Krav Maga, and people go, but that isn't Krav Maga. You know, that's
okay.
That's a reverse roundhouse kick. You know.
Yeah. So that leads then to my next question, which is, again, you said at the start that you actually spent time within the IDF, and how did that come about then? Because, pardon me for saying so, but you don't sound Israeli. You don't sound like that's where you're from originally.
But I can speak Hebrew. I wanted to join the British Army. At the time, I was incredibly fit. I was sent off to Wales to do a 2-week course. I passed that 2-week course. And at the end of the 2 weeks, there was quite a few that started. There was only about, I think, 18, 19 of us that finished the course. And then they said to me, "We're really happy you finished the course, but unfortunately, we can't join you because you're too small."
Okay.
I said,
right.
"You've let me do the course." And they said, "Well, we couldn't stop you from doing the course." And I said, "Why couldn't you tell me that in the beginning?" "Oh, because we wasn't allowed to tell you that in the beginning, but you're allowed to tell me now." Anyway, so that happened. I went home, and I was really stressed because I really wanted to join the army. I'd had quite a bad upbringing, and I wanted to do something with myself. And someone said to me, "Well, why don't you go and join the Israeli military? You know, you're Jewish." And I was like, okay. So I went down to Golders Green and I said, "Where do I sign up?" And they put their arms out and they said, "Welcome, come in. Cannon fodder, here we go." And within 3 months, I was out in Israel on a kibbutz and joining the military, and it went from there.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's quite a leap. Had you ever been to Israel before?
No.
Okay, so it wasn't just like moving to a completely different country and way of being. You were joining the service as well. So that must have been a massive culture shock on every level.
Well, it wasn't. The good thing was it was a group of people from England that went. Well, it was a group of people from different countries, and we're called Olim Chadashim, which means the new kind of people coming in from different countries. And at the time in the 80s, there was a lot of that going on.
Right. So is that, sorry, just to interject there, is that similar to the French Foreign Legion setup?
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, that makes more sense.
Same type of thing. You go and join up. You join as a foreign group together, all different languages. You're given maybe a week to speak to each other in your own language, and then you're told, right, you're going on what's called an Ulpan, where you learn Hebrew. You're no longer allowed to speak any of your language. You only have to speak ours. So for about the next 4 weeks, you hardly speak. And it's a very short, sharp shock into learning another language. You learn it very quickly. The only thing you discover when you leave the army is you've learned how to speak army Hebrew and not street Hebrew, and people look at you in a strange way when you start speaking to them like that. So and the street stuff afterwards.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And so how long were you there?
8 years.
Oh, quite a long time, crikey. Yeah. So were you committed when you went over there? Were you committed to an initial period of time and then
initial period of 3 years? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So, and then it's up to you if you want to stay more.
Right. Fair enough. Well, again, there must probably loads of stories within that. But because this is such a small sort of just an introductory podcast, we can't really explore that further, although I'd love to do that. So hopefully over the course of the weekend, we'll get some time to chat and go through that a little bit more, because it's fascinating stuff. Now, so you came back, you set up your own organization, which is Global Kapap. And as you say, now you have schools and students all over the world. And so how do you go about setting up a global organization? We have lots of franchises here in the UK, lots of people trying to expand into that franchise model. How do you do it globally?
Well, when I first set it up, I'll be honest with you, I just assumed I'm just another instructor like all the other instructors. And I started off with a few guys from the Metropolitan Police who I was friends with. I did a little bit of external work for them, because no one officially ever works for the Metropolitan Police. But I did a little bit of external work for them. I joined forces with a few guys, and we started what back then was called Kapap England. And it grew very, very quickly. All of a sudden, people were like, we really like what you're doing. And I was quite shocked, because I thought, well, there's many Krav Maga organizations out there. There wasn't so many Kapap. Avi was the only other one. Avi Nadia was the only one at the time.
Well, Avi was Avi was.
I was under the auspice of Moshe Gilisko at that time, which we kind of fell apart, and I started my own. And it just grew. It's just, I don't know how it happened, but I mean, okay, it's been 12 plus years now. And kind of, because before that, I was always working for Moshe, and then we kind of split. And it's just been a whirlwind, 12 years, a whirlwind of just people from different countries contacting me and saying that we've heard about you. Would you like to come? And I'm like, really? You've heard about me? Okay. Oh, that's nice. I trained with people like, I don't know if you've heard of Hanshi Brown, who's a Kempo Jiu-Jitsu, who's a former military guy himself.
Right.
He knew, funnily enough, he knew a few of the guys who trained me in the Israeli military. How he knew, I have no idea. He introduced me to other people, and kind of through my martial arts background, I got introduced by other instructors to other instructors, and it just grew. It just grew and grew and grew. And then I found myself in Europe, and then in Asia, and then in America. And it's quietened down since COVID. And I'm sure that's for everyone. But we're just starting to pick up again now, and it's good. We've revamped a lot of the organization and how we do things, but it's picking up again, which is great.
Well, that's fantastic. Well, it's great that it's doing that, and hopefully that is a reflection right across the board of martial arts. So that then brings us to the festival itself. And do you have any kind of plan in mind of what you're looking to do there, or is it a bit more open-ended?
I'm kind of like, I have ideas, but I always like to look at the audience and see who's there. And then we kind of decide what we're going to do. But we've always kept things simple. We're not into complicated techniques. We like to make things as simple as possible, that, someone, we could say the next day, 24 hours later, okay, show me what we showed you yesterday. And they could go, oh yeah, it was that. And we're like, great. That's rather than going 24 hours later and saying, do you remember what we taught you? No, can't remember. And that I always say it's important, if you can remember one or two things from a seminar you went on, that's really, really good. Because sometimes there's so much thrown at you, and I think, as I said, self-defense has to be simple. It can't be complicated, and it has to be something that everyone can do of all ages, from children to older people. Obviously, you've got your range of the young, fit guys that they want the extreme stuff, and you can give them that, if that's your crowd. But it really depends on the crowd.
Okay, all right. So we shall say that then, as depending on who comes on the mats will depend on what you do. But again, I mean, the whole idea of the festival is to bring lots of different people together and get lots of different people doing things they wouldn't necessarily normally do. So hopefully this big melting pot of ideas and information and sharing knowledge. And so actually that's great in the fact that, people can sort of come along, have a question, have have something that they're not sure about, see how it tallies in with what they do. And so, yeah, that fits in with the ethos entirely of the festival. So that's brilliant. So the last question for today then, my friend, because I know you're very busy, it's how do people reach out to you if they want to get in touch with you before the festival itself?
Globalkapap.com. I mean, that's our website.
Okay.
It's global and then Kapap. So we're quite, all our contact details are on there. Our clubs are on there. All the different senior instructors. I mean, everyone's contact is on there. My contact is on there, so we're easily contactable. You can put my name in social media and it comes up with all my information as well. Some reason people have been doing that for years, putting stuff up about me. Hopefully most of it's good, but I'm never sure.
Okay, well, I'll put the link to the site in the description, and thank you ever so much for agreeing to come along for the festival, my friend. We look forward to seeing you there.